Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Dear friends, welcome to my channel Golpo Kahini. Today I am going to read out a story of Oscar Wilde. The name of the story is The Happy Prince. Please subscribe the channel who haven't yet. So let's start the story The Happy Prince. The Happy Prince was a statue. He stood very high above the city where everyone could see him. He was covered all over with leaves of gold. His eyes were two diamonds, and a large red ruby shone on the top of his sword. Everyone in the city enjoyed looking at him. He is very beautiful, people said to each other. But he is not very useful, is he? Why can't you be like the Happy Prince? Mothers said to their children if they cried. The Happy Prince never cried about anything. I'm glad there is someone in the world who is quite happy, said an angry old man as he looked at the wonderful statue. He looks just like an angel, said the school children as they came out of church. How do you know? Asked one of the schoolmasters. You have never seen one. Oh, but we have in our dreams, answered the children. The master looked angry because he did not like children to dream too much. One night a little bird flew over the city. His friends had gone away to Egypt 6 weeks before, but he had stayed behind. He was in love with a beautiful water flower. He met her early in the spring when he was flying down the river chasing a big yellow insect. He stopped to talk to her, but of course she could not answer him. After a while he grew tired of her and decided to follow his friends to Egypt. He flew all day, and at night he arrived at the city. Where shall I stay? He asked as he looked around him. When he saw the statue standing high above the city, I'll sleep there, he cried. It is a fine place with plenty of fresh air. So he flew down and landed between the feet of the Happy Prince. I have a golden bedroom, he said to himself as he looked around. He got ready to go to sleep. Just as he was closing his eyes, a large drop of water fell on him. That's very strange, he cried. There is not a cloud in the sky, and yet it is raining. Then another drop fell. What is the use of a statue if it cannot keep the rain off? He said. I must look for another place to sleep. Just at that moment, another drop fell. He looked up and saw something very strange. The eyes of Happy Prince was filled with tears. Tears were running down his golden face. He looked so beautiful in the moonlight that the little bird was really sorry for him. Who are you? He asked. I am the Happy Prince. Why are you crying then? Asked the bird. You have made me very wet with your tears. When I was alive and had a human heart, answered the statue, I did not know that sorrow was. I lived in a beautiful palace where there was never any sadness. In the daytime I played with my friends in the garden. At night I danced in the palace. All around the garden was a high wall. I never knew what was on the other side of it. Everything around me was very beautiful. My friends called me the Happy Prince, and I was. Then I died, and people put me off here so that I could see all the ugliness and unhappiness of my city. And although my heart is made of lead, I can't help crying. What? Isn't he made of gold all the way through? Thought the bird to himself. He was too polite to say such a thing aloud. The statue began to speak again. Far away in a little street there is a poor house, he said. One of the windows is open, and I can see a woman sitting at a table. Her face is thin and she looks worried. In a bed in a corner of the room, her little boy is lying ill. He is asking for oranges. His mother has nothing to give him but river water. So he is crying. Little bird, will you take her the ruby from the top of my sword? My friends are waiting for me in the Egypt, said the bird. I must go to them. Little bird, said the prince, please stay with me for just one night and be my messenger. The boy is so thirsty and the mother so sad. I don't think I like little boys, answered the bird. Last summer, when I was staying by the river, there were two boys who threw stones at me. They never hit me, I flew too fast, but it was not very pleasant. But the prince looked so sad that the little bird was sorry. It is very cold here, he said, but I will stay with you for one night and be your messenger. Thank you, little bird, said the prince. So the bird picked the big ruby out of the prince's sword. He flew away with it in his beak over the roofs of the town. He flew by the palace and heard the sound of dancing. He flew over the river and saw all the ships ready to sail away. He flew over crowded shops and saw people buying and selling. At last he came to the poor house and looked in. The boy was lying ill on his bed, and the mother had fallen asleep. In he flew and put the big ruby on the table beside the woman's hand. Then he flew around the bed, cooling the boy's head with wings. How cool I feel, said the boy. I must be getting better. And he went to sleep. Then the bird flew back to the happy prince and told him what he had done. I don't know why, he said, but I feel quite warm now, although it is so cold. That is because you have helped someone, said the prince. The little bird soon fell asleep. Early next morning, the bird flew down to the river and had a bath. How strange, said a professor as he was passing over the bridge. That kind of bird here in winter. And he wrote a long letter to the newspaper. Everyone talked about it. It was so unusual. Tonight I shall go to Egypt, said the bird. He visited all the buildings in the city and sat on the top of the Churchtown Tower for a long time. Everywhere he went, the other birds looked at him and said, what a fine stranger. When the moon rose, he flew back to the happy prince. Have you any messages for Egypt? He cried. I'm just starting. Little bird, said the prince, please stay with me for one night longer. My friends are waiting for me in Egypt, said the bird. The sun is shining and the air is warm. I must go. Little bird, said the prince, far away across the city I see a young man in a small room. He is leaning over a table covered with papers. In a glass by his side, in a bunch of dead flowers, he is trying to finish a play for the theater. But he is too cold to write anymore. There is no fire in the room, and he is weak for hunger. I will wait with you for one more night, said the bird, who was very kind. Shall I take him another ruby? I have no ruby now, said the prince. My eyes are all I have left. They are made of precious diamonds. Pull one of them out and take it to him. He will sell it and buy firewood and food, then finish the play. Dear prince, said the bird, I cannot do that. And he began to cry. Little bird, said the prince, do as I command you. So the bird took out the prince's eye and flew away to the young man's room. It was easy to get in, for there was a hole in the roof. The young man had his head buried in his hands so that he did not see the bird. When he looked up, he found the beautiful diamond lying on the dead flowers. This must be from someone who likes my plays, he cried. Now I can finish my one I'm writing. And he looked very happy. Next day the bird flew down to the harbor. He watched a large ship sail away and heard the sailors shouting to one another. I am going to Egypt, cried the bird, but nobody cared. When the moon rose, he flew back to the happy prince. I have come to say goodbye to you, he cried. Little bird, said the prince, please stay with me for one more night. It is winter, answered the bird, and snow will soon be here. In Egypt, the sun is warm on the green trees. My friends are building a nest, and the pink and white birds are watching them. Dear prince, I must leave you, but I will never forget you. Next spring, I will bring you back two beautiful jewels in place of those you have given away. The ruby will be redder than a red rose, and the diamond will be as white as snow. In the street below us, said the happy prince, in a little match girl. She has dropped all her matches in the dirty street and they are spoiled. Her father will beat her if she doesn't bring home some money and she is crying. Take out my other eye and give it to her. Then her father will not beat her. I will stay with you one night longer, said the bird, but I cannot take out your eye. You would be completely blind then. Little bird, said the prince, do as I command you. So he took out the prince's other eye and went off with it in his beak. He flew past the match girl and slipped the diamond into her hand. What a lovely piece of glass, cried the girl, and she ran home laughing. Then the bird came back to the prince. You are blind now, he said, so I will stay with you for always. No, little bird, said the prince, you must go away to Egypt. I will stay with you always, said the bird, and he slept at the prince's feet. The next day he sat on the prince's shoulder and told him stories of what he had seen in the strange land. He told him of the great red birds that stand in rows on the bank of the Nile, waiting to catch golden fish their beaks. He told him about the merchants who walk slowly across the desert with their camels. He spoke about the great green snake that sleeps in a palm tree and has 20 men to feed in it with sweet cakes. Dear little bird, said the prince, you tell me of wonderful things, but I am more interested in the sadness of my own people. Fly over my city, little bird, and tell me what you see. So the bird flew over the great city. He saw rich people living happily in their beautiful houses while beggars were sitting at their gates. He saw the white faces of hungry children looking out from their dark house. Under a bridge, two little boys were sitting together closely to try and keep warm. How hungry we are, they said. You can't stay here, shouted the watchman, and he sent them out into the rain. The bird flew back and told the prince what he had seen. I am covered with gold, said the prince. You must take it off leaf by leaf and give it to the poor people. The bird took off the gold leaf by leaf, till the prince looked quite dull and grey. He took the gold to the poor, and the children's face grew healthier. They laughed once more and played game in the street. We have bread now, they cried. The snow came, and the air was very cold. The streets shone like silver. Ice hung down from the houses, and everybody wore warm fur coats. The poor little bird grew colder and colder, but he would not leave the prince. At last he knew he was going to die. He had just enough strength left to fly up to the prince's shoulder once more. Goodbye, dear prince, he said. Will you let me kiss your hand? I am glad you are going to Egypt at last, said the prince. You have stayed here too long, but you must give me a goodbye kiss, for I love you. I am not going to Egypt, said the bird. I am going to the house of death. He kissed the prince and fell down dead at his feet. At that moment, a strange crack sounded inside the statue as if something had broken. It was the lead heart of the statue. It had broken in two. It certainly was cold night. Early next morning, the mayor was walking in the street below with the town councillors. As they passed the statue, he looked up at it. Oh dear, how old and dirty the happy prince looked, he said. Oh yes, said the town councillors, who always agreed with the mayor. They went up to look at it. The ruby has fallen out of his sword, and his eyes are gone, and he is no longer golden, said the mayor. He is no better than a beggar. No better than a beggar, repeated the town councillors. And there is a dead bird at his feet, too. We really must not allow that to happen in future. So they pulled down the statue of the happy prince. He is no longer beautiful, so he is no longer useful, they said. Then they melted the statue in a fire, and the mayor held a meeting to decide what was to be done with the metal. We must have another statue, of course, he said, and it shall be a statue of myself. Of myself, said each of the town councillors, and they quarrelled. When I last heard of them, they were still quarrelling. What a strange thing, they said, when the statue of the happy prince was being melted. This broken lead heart will not melt in the fire. We must throw it away. So they threw it on a dust heap where the dead bird was also lying. Bring me the two most precious things in the city, said God to one of his angels. The angel brought him the lead heart and the dead bird. You have chosen rightly, said God. This little bird shall sing forever in my garden in heaven, and in my city of gold the happy prince shall honor me.